Hi. So welcome to tonight's debate between the candidates for first Selectman here in Orange. This is the third of three debates between incumbent Mr. Jim Zioli and challenger Mr. Connor Dean. The Men's Club here at Or Shalom is honored to be sponsoring tonight's debate and to be part of this tradition. My name is Seth Hollander. I'm the current president of the Men's Club. Before going any further, I do want to give a quick shout out to OGAT, that's been doing such a fine job with all three debates. So Roger Tausig will be our moderator, and Roger Hess will be our timekeeper. Even though my name's not Roger, they let me do this. But before handing it over to Roger Tausig, if we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening and welcome, everybody. My name is Roger Tausig. As Seth mentioned, I will be the moderator. I missed the meeting where they chose the moderator for the event, so here I am. But very much looking forward to it, as I have done in the past. And it's been a lively and good event, and it's becoming a tradition here at Or Shalom. I want to quickly introduce the candidates. We have a brief bio for Connor Dean. He's been a son of Orange for nearly 30 years, a graduate of Orange and Amity school systems. Connor went on to the University of Cincinnati, earned his Bachelor of Fine Arts in 2014. Upon graduating, he founded his own nonprofit organization, Broadway Method Academy, which trains young people in musical theater. Connor is ready to bring his effective business leadership to the town of Orange. So that is a thumbnail sketch, but they'll tell you more about themselves as the evening goes on. And Mr. Zioli, I believe he feels that his 8 terms in office and his body of work speak for him. And I think we all are familiar with Mr. Zioli. So just a little bit of housekeeping. To start with, in the interest of decorum, I must request that there be no applause or other show of support or dissent until the candidates have each finished their closing statements at the end of the debate. That is to keep order and to maintain a good environment here. And lastly, please, anybody with a cell phone that's on or not on vibrate, please put it into the silent or off mode. The event or the debate will follow this format, starting with the fact that there was a coin toss earlier when both candidates arrived, and the coin toss was determined the order of opening and closing statements. And the result of that coin toss was that Mr. Dean will be giving his opening statement first and his closing statement last, and vice versa for Mr. Zioli. The way things will work is each candidate will have 3 minutes for opening remarks, and then we have prepared questions for the candidates. They'll take turns answering first. The answer gets 2 minutes. The rebuttal by the opposing candidate also gets 2 minutes, and the original answerer gets 1 minute for a counter rebuttal. We have Roger Hess acting as timer at the 30-second point where 30 seconds are remaining for each candidate's response. Mr. Hess will notify them and then verbally announce time is up to end that question. If time permits, we'll take questions from the audience members. There will be cards available to submit a question. We'll collect them and screen for objectivity and then present as many as time permits. Closing remarks will be 3 minutes for each candidate. The next order of business is I'd like for our candidates to each introduce their slates of office of candidates who are in the audience tonight. So if you want to take a minute to do that, Mr. Dean. And if you're the person, please just rise in place when you're introduced.
Great. Good evening, everyone. We'll start with our Board of Selectmen tonight. Rosanna Capetta, Charles Flynn, Mitch Goldblatt. Town Clerk, Margaret Novicki. Tax Collector, Mark Moyer. Board of Finance, Kevin McNabola, Pat Romano, and PJ Shanley. Town Planning and Zoning, Dan Fitzmaurice, and Mike Muddett. Orange Board of Education, Jared Milbrandt, Carmen Rodriguez, and Liz Tremper. Amity Board of Education, Carla Eichler, Craig Lennon, and Patty Post. Constables, Santo Galtiotto Jr., Randy Thomas, and Jay Carrier. And finally, our Judge of Probate, Ben Gettinger. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Mr. Zioli.
Good evening. I'll start with our constables, who are Jody Damon, Mike Donadeo, Glenn Papello, and Dan Zapatka. Zoning for the Republicans will be Oscar Ozzie Parenti, Tom Tarenti, and Kevin Cornell. The Amity Board of Education will be Sean Hartshorn and Christina Levere Daddio. For the Orange Elementary Board of Education, it is Ronette Pompano James, Tatiana Messina Mullins, and Jeffrey Kapp. For the Finance Board is Ajit Jain and Joseph Nuzzo. For the Board of Selectmen, there's Ralph Okenquist, John Carangelo, and Judy Wright Williams. And for Judge of Probate is Wynn Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Zioli. All right, we'll now go to opening statements, and Mr. Dean, you will go first.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Thank you to Orshlam's Men Club for hosting this event, our third and final debate. Can everybody hear me? Or we're okay to take these off when we're speaking? Great. Although lots of time has passed, it's great to be back here at Orshalom. I enjoyed many bar and bat mitzvahs through the years. I'm happy to have this opportunity to once again hopefully show you, the voters, why I would make an excellent first selectman of the town of Orange. This town, our community, is part of me. It's who I am and who I aspire to be. When I think of Orange, I think of my time at Turkey Hill School, building friendships with people I still call best friends. I think of the people who have shown my family love during some of our darkest hours. When I think of Orange, I think of what can be. I value this town's strong history, but understand what is needed to move us forward. The first selectman is the CEO of the town. Their job is to evaluate, assess, and improve the infrastructure of the community, ensuring a vibrant future for not only those who conduct business in this town, but most importantly, for those who call Orange home. I believe that in any successful business, a leader must create a strategy, a roadmap for the future. As your first selectman, I will ensure that the town delivers a clear, comprehensive strategy, a 10-year plan that residents can stay up to date on while holding Town Hall accountable. This will enable us to improve our aging infrastructure, evolve our top-rated education system, and expand our commercial tax base, all while maintaining accountability and fiscal responsibility. Although we're not out of the woods yet, we hopefully will soon close this chapter on the pandemic. As we begin to return to our new normal, our community deserves a forward-thinking leader who will ensure that this town will forever be the community that we love, not because we've simply relied on the past, but because we've looked to the future. A future that is bright, where our community and our community members feel included, respected, and safe. It's time to move Orange forward.
Dean, Mr. Zioli, your opening statement, please.
Thank you. And also, like Connor, thank you to Orshalomi and the Men's Club for sponsoring this event. It has become a vital part of the campaign process every 2 years. And being here, as I spoke out in the hallway earlier, it gets the message out, even if it's just to a few different people who maybe didn't make it to debate 1 or debate 2. It always brings new thoughts, processes, and answers to the public. So for that, we are truly grateful. But I've been born here, raised here, have lived here my entire life. I think that the town of Orange is the most wonderful place to be. I don't think anybody would doubt that or my dedication to this community. While we carry our friendships dear, we carry the town even closer. And the daily operation of the town of Orange is something that I maintain 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And no matter what the call is, Jim usually can be there. And we find that extremely important. Orange has moved forward. Orange does have long-term plans. Orange does have a 5-year and 10-year infrastructure plans. Those things already exist. My opponent doesn't understand that. He has not participated in the town as of yet. With time, it will solve some of these issues. But until then, we rely on steadiness and move the ship forward in a constant and even manner so that all of you are comfortable here and can afford to stay here. We are working towards different types of housing, different opportunities. Economic development is something that is a daily, not a weekly item on the forefront. I have served on the Orange Fire Department. I have been a contract bus driver for the town of Orange, of which I drove my opponent to school. I have sat on state boards. I have been on the state legislative committee for the evaluation and expanding of training and education for police officers, the State of Connecticut Department of Agriculture Farmland Preservation Advisory Board for 9 years and chairman of that for 7, and many other boards and commissions that we have participated in. I've been a life member just of the Orange Fair, that fairgrounds property and walk track that many of you use every day. That came because of the Fair Committee. I was one of the teenagers that helped clear that property down there after the town bought that 19 acres for $149,000 way back when. I was there. And so my dedication to the community has never wavered for 62 years.
Thank you, gentlemen. So now we'll go to the debate portion of tonight's event. The first question goes to Mr. Zioli first. Again, you'll have 2 minutes to rebut, Mr. Dean, and then Mr. Zioli, you'll have a minute after that to rebut the rebuttal. First question, Mr. Zioli, please address what you feel will be the future tax situation for residents in Orange.
The future tax situation has remained constant and the envy of surrounding towns. While my opponent likes to portray that you are overtaxed and overburdened, a 33 mill rate is 10 mills less than Woodbridge, and you are afforded many more services than a town like Woodbridge. We are able to maintain and function. My opponent doesn't understand that beyond the budget, you keep a fund balance, which is like your extra money in the bank, in order to take care of unexpected, non-reoccurring events. Peck Place School froze. The first thing we did was throw $800,000 at it to stop the hemorrhaging down there. We're able to do that because we have money in the bank beyond what you need for your normal budgetary obligations. Things like this come with time. You learn these things with time. There's an obligation that we maintain a certain balance of funding, of fund balance to budget ratio. We do keep more than that. This year we paved a $1,700,000 plus in road work in the town of Orange. That was paid for cash. We did not bond. In the past, they would have bonded every 5 years for $5 million, which would last about 4 years and a fraction for public works to pave. We paid cash. We will pay cash again next year. That's why you have that extra money. We did it last year. So this is the planning that goes into that, and you do need funds beyond just your budgetary needs to control that. With the education part of our budget being 67% of the budget, the town of Orange's part to control is only this big. If you look at the growth of both education systems, Amity has taken the lion's share of those increases. Orange Elementary has taken some small bites in those increases. But
Mr. Dean, 2 minutes to rebut.
Great. So first, I want to make very clear, I think we all have to look past the semantics of my opponent doesn't understand. I don't think that's fair. I've built a business from the ground up. At the end of the day, I understand budgeting and financing. And I would appreciate a little bit more respect, Jim. In terms of taxes here in Orange, consistently, what I'm hearing from residents is our taxes are going up. And at the end of the day, they are. How do we fix that? I've made a bold statement, which I realize is bold, that in year one, there are going to be no new taxes. People say, how are you going to do that? Okay, here's how we do it. Between money that we've been given from the federal government, from the American Rescue Plan, as well as a certain amount of money that is in that fund balance, I believe we can sustain taxes for 1 year. Beyond that, what do we need to do? We need to evolve our commercial tax base. I think it's incredibly important to relieve some of this tax burden that is falling on residents. And the first selectman and I agree. I'm not coming in and saying, you know, we need to spend all of this money in this rainy day account. That would be foolish. And I said before, fiscal responsibility needs to be number one. But part of that means that the town of Orange should not be taking more money than what is needed from residents. I really believe that, especially after the year that we've had with COVID. It would be nice to say, you know what, we're not going to raise taxes this year. We have enough money to do it. And then part of that 10-year plan that I talked about is investing and making sure that we're attracting businesses that will help offset some of the tax burden on residents.
Thank you. Mr. Zioli, 1 minute.
well, I think the biggest one I can remember off the top of my head was Dr. Brady at Amity, one year when he had a surplus and he infused $800,000 of surplus into the budget. I was one of the few there that argued against infusing that money into the budget. He took $800,000 of surplus and infused it into the operating budget. The following year, he not only didn't have the $800,000, he had to put in an increase on top of that, and the town of Orange, which is over 50% of the Amity budget, had an increase of over $1 million. Those of you who are on the Board of Finance then would remember that. And that's exactly why you don't use that money into the budget. You can use it for capital projects, non-recurrings, but you cannot infuse it into the budget because you will create a hole in the following year that has to be made up. So you will either go back to the fund balance or you will have to raise taxes beyond what you need.
Thank you. Next question goes to Mr. Dean first. There's been a rather large number of homes in Orange that have been sold by people who are in the over 60 age group. It appears the new owners of these houses are younger couples with children of school age. Please address what your plans within the Orange school system will be to address the additional young children enrolling in our school system. How will this also affect taxes? 2 minutes.
Well, I've met some of these people knocking on doors, and it's great to have more young families in the town of Orange. Conversely, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, we have to make sure that we have a place for these people over 60 to go, because I know a lot of them would like to stay in the town. These young families in education, it's an interesting thing. I am a son of the Orange public school system, the Amity school system, had a fantastic experience at Turkey Hill School. We need to make sure that we are investing in the infrastructure of our school system. I think it's really, really important. If we want families to continue to move to the town, which the main reason they move to Orange is for the school system. What are we doing to ensure that that school system is attracting people for years to come? Collaboration is what I've talked about a lot throughout the course of this campaign. I plan to collaborate with our Board of Education. I think we have a great bipartisan Board of Education that works really, really hard to ensure that our schools are well-funded and that classroom sizes stay manageable. And I think that's important. And I do commend the bipartisan Board of Education for doing that. But again, it comes back to planning and transparency. I think that as we continue to grow as a community with more young families coming in, we have to have a plan to ensure that we have the capability to grow our school system. And I think number one is infrastructure.
Thank you. Mr. Zioli, 2 minutes.
Well, during the COVID challenge, we've had approximately 165 homes in town change hands. We've had a lot of new people come in, and some others move out or move to downsizing here within the town. We do have some challenges in the school system that already exist. By way of so many new people moving in, we have classrooms that are struggling with 24 and 25 children. Now, when I went to High Plains School, 24 or 25 children in Miss Swirsky's class, Miss McGuire's class, wasn't a problem. That was normal. Nowadays, there's a whole lot of different issues going on, and every class has 1, 2, or more paras in those classes for reasons that need to be. We try to maintain our classrooms. People would like it at 15, 16, 17 children. I think if we can keep our children between 18 and 20 is a great number. But unfortunately, or fortunately, many people have chosen to like Orange as a safe place to move. They like our school system. That's a strong point for the town of Orange, and for any realtors in the room have seen that and heard that repeatedly. But we do have expansion of class size. With expansion of class size will come expansion of budget. 67% of the town of Orange budget is education, and it will affect Amity and the Orange elementary schools. So we do welcome people in, but don't be in denial. As that goes, you have to expand teachers, more staff, more benefits, more paras, all the things that go along with it. It costs money, and if you think it doesn't, you're just fooling yourselves.
Mr. Dean, 1 minute to rebut.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to having a clear strategy. One of my running mates, Charles Flynn, who currently serves on the Orange Board of Education running for Board of Selectmen, has been saying the business of Orange is education. I couldn't agree more. It's our #1 revenue driver. People move to the town for education. So we have to have a strategy. We have to have a plan of how we're going to handle that growth. I agree that it's going to cost money. So again, we have to figure out how we offset some of that financial burden. And to me, that's on the commercial side.
Thank you. Next question goes to Mr. Zioli first. Should the town's experience with COVID-19 shape a pandemic plan for the future? And if so, what would it look like? 2 minutes.
I think our emergency planning, Board of Health, Health Director, and Health Department all are in tune with that keenly. I think we've seen articles in the paper on it that the Health Director has written. I think any of you who follow this will see that they follow state guidelines and federal guidelines. There are options beyond what is implemented locally at times, but it is something that will come for the future, for the booster shots, which will be coming shortly, I believe. You know, they had set up their clinics initially. I think they serviced about 1,800 people. The booster system, I think, will probably be even more than that, because people who couldn't get shots initially in Orange, whether because of the age structure or they had somebody who could get it for them at a doctor's facility elsewhere or at one of the hospitals, there were people who got it. But I think Orange will see an increase in the amount of people that get the booster shots, and they will be setting up for that. And it is something that the health department managed very well. Paperwork was a little bit of a problem, but they did manage the overall process at High Plains Community Center very well. And they will have to plan for that and for the future. I mean, it's like 1918 all over again. We had a plague then, and they solved it, and here we are in 2020 and had a plague of sorts, and it has been relatively solved. We got the Amity report just this week, came over by email, and it was all zeros, which was a great week. No exposures, no COVID cases, and also we are starting to see that as a good thing for our school systems.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, first off, I'm glad to live in a state under the leadership of Governor Ned Lamont for, I think, really steady leadership throughout the pandemic. And I, quite frankly, know a lot of Republicans, not just Democrats, that are going to vote for him again, because I think he got us through, and the data is the truth, right? You know, if you look around the country, Connecticut is leading the nation in terms of COVID recovery, and I think that's something to applaud, but also something to look to. There was a clear strategy. There was clear mitigating efforts, and I think that's important because, as we all know, this is fluid. We're still figuring this out, and as I said earlier, we're not out of the woods yet. We have money from the American Rescue Plan that the town has. I've said before that I think we need to invest a certain amount of it into our public health department. And Jim talked about that they did a great job vaccinating nearly 2,000 people. I would agree. Maybe some of that money needs to go to technology so that the paperwork is not so much of a problem. I think it's great to bolster up our public health department to ensure that A, we get out of the woods on COVID, but B, to make sure that we're ready for the next thing. Because this world is changing, as we all know. And I want to make sure that the town of Orange is ready to rock and roll for whatever may come our way. And I yield back my time.
Thank you, Mr. Zioli. 1 minute.
I think that will happen. There is money for it. They've been told there is money for it. They are creating their budgetary plan of what they need for it. And I think once that is finalized and all, it will be worked out and all. The paperwork problem wasn't necessarily a technology problem. There was some communication flaws there. I'll just leave it at that, not all data was gathered that should have been gathered at the time. And it did create a few issues. But all in all, it's fine. It worked, and the town of Orange can afford to cover it, as they did. And so we'll move forward with that. There are other things coming. If you watch the news, there's still other viruses out there. You know, the COVID flu. When I went to college, oh, boy, that went quick.
Thank you. Next question goes to Mr. Dean first. Beyond the ordinance adopted by the Board of Selectmen with respect to cannabis, what additional regulation by a municipality is permitted by Public Act 21-1 of the special session, and should it be pursued by the town? And I do have the language of that here. It says the Public Act 1 requires municipalities, upon petition of 10% of their voters, to hold a local referendum on whether to allow the recreational sale of marijuana, allows municipalities to charge retailers for certain initial public safety expenses, and allows them to establish fines for cannabis smoking in outdoor sections of restaurants.
Yeah, this has been a common topic that has come up at all of our debates, and I think an interesting one. Generally speaking, I think that we need to make sure we're following the same rules, regulations that we would see in any type of liquor store or any type of adult store. You know, there's a certain distance from a church, a school, neighborhoods, etc. With regard to public's input on this, I've spoken with members of our Planning and Zoning Commission, and I know that they are working through a variety of options that they may be able to take. But ultimately, I think it would be smart to see this through. And we had public participation on the Board of Selectmen meeting regarding cannabis being used on town property. Although not many people spoke either way, I think giving people the forum to have the opportunity to speak and give their input is greatly important to our town and how we move our town forward in regards to cannabis. Because, hopefully unlike COVID, cannabis is not going anywhere. It's going to be part of many communities, and we'll see how Orange plays it out. Likely West Haven and Milford are going to be in favor of it. So either we get on board and regulate and make sure that we're protecting our children and our community, or we don't act. And that's what, right now, Planning and Zoning is going through all of their options. And I look forward to seeing what discussions come of that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Zioli, 2 minutes.
Connor is correct. The Zoning Commission, we've both followed that, I think, rather closely, are looking at which direction to go with this. Are they going to do a moratorium? Are they just going to put it through? What is required with it? We are being eyed. I've had 3 commercial realtors now. I think at our first debate I had 1. I now have 3 commercial realtors that are kind of trying to jockey for position as of Friday for different locations in town that they think would be acceptable for a store for all of these products. And it's rather interesting. They all have their own pitch, and they are, you got to watch the money behind the store, I think, is kind of an important thing. It costs a lot of money to set up one of these facilities, and you have to have some substantial backing to do it. So I think they need to, the state probably, as well as the local level, needs to monitor who is getting these licenses to operate these facilities. They went through this with the grow facilities, of which there's one in West Haven. You need $2 to $5 million behind you in order to set up one of those facilities. And while you don't need that much for one of these stores, it's a significant amount of money, and I think that you need to follow the trail of the money. But it will come with time. I think it's something, again, like a liquor store or some of these other stores that some people hate it, some people love it, but most communities end up with it. We'll be,
Okay, thank you. The next question goes to Mr. Zioli first.
you got to rebut.
Oh, I'm
he gets
sorry,
a rebuttal.
Mr. Dean, you get a minute to rebut, sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. Upon looking at the original legislation, and this may have changed, I know they're still working through many details, as Jim and I both know. It's my understanding that the state of Connecticut is going to have a lottery system for these retail locations. Okay, so 5 people can't come to town hall and make their pitch. It's actually going to go through the state, who is awarded the license to be able to have the retail. So our job as a municipality is how we regulate the sale of it, right? Making sure that it's in a location that works for our community. And I think that's the task before us. And quite frankly, I say we embrace it. We've talked before. There's also a kickback financially. And maybe that's my time.
They got the big bell for you.
We'll end there.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Zioli, this question goes to you first. Connecticut has endured closures of businesses over the last 2 years, some related to COVID and others unrelated to COVID. What will your administration do to retain businesses in Orange?
We have seen some closures that were coming anyhow. One that was closing regardless was Wooden Tap. They decided to close before there was any COVID problem or anything. Their business here, they felt wasn't sustaining for them. So Wooden Tap was one that closed on their own, not for any other issue. Some of the other businesses are struggling, and restaurateurs, which is some of our biggest business. If you go down our post road, lunchtimes or evenings, the places that are the busiest are usually the places that are serving food, and which is fine. But the challenge that a lot of them are seeing, and many of the businesses, which we've seen when you go in store after store, they can't get help. And we talked about this at the last debate. The biggest problem we seem to be having is getting help. I don't know why. I don't know exactly where the people are that should be wanting to work, but that has been a big challenge. I have to go to another community. Lorenzo's down in West Haven. I was talking to him. They happen to be friends of mine. He couldn't get a dishwasher. He was up to offering $16, $18 an hour. Couldn't get a dishwasher. I have a friend who runs food concessions for all the Yale events, 287 events. He's offering $16 to $18 an hour or more to hustle at these events, serving food and whatnot, and not a restaurant. This is like snack bars and stuff like that. Can't get help. And the Economic Development Commission and Chamber of Commerce, we've met, and we're talking about this, and they're setting up, going to set up like a job bank. Businesses posting, looking for help, and people trying to pair them up.
Thank you. Mr. Dean, 2 minutes.
Yeah, so we all know retail is changing. That's just the name of the game, unfortunately. I think right now, specialty businesses are thriving. I think small businesses are starting to thrive again, if they've been lucky enough and fortunate enough to make it through COVID. To me, what Orange needs is a meeting of the minds. I'd like to see us bring in some of the top business leaders in southwestern Connecticut, bring them together and do an assessment. What does Orange need? What are we doing well? What can be changed? We look around town, what businesses have been opening recently. To me, it's a lot of experienced businesses. It's Stapa Vineyard, which is phenomenal. I urge you all to go patron them. The wine is delicious and the view's even better. Montana Nights. Who knew we would have an axe throwing place here in town? By the way, they have great pizza there too. It's a fun Friday night. So I think we have to reimagine what our commercial development is in Orange. And I understand that some of these bigger places like FedEx and Amazon might potentially, hopefully, be good for our grand list. But I think it's important to make sure that we have businesses that Orange residents want to frequent. I think that's important. So to me, we got to get all the smart minds together of business and create, like I've said before, a strategy, a plan. Why would you want to come do business in Orange? And then we start highlighting that. But you know, it's not an Orange problem. This is everywhere. Business is changing. You know, Amazon has changed the world, as we all know it. So we have to strategize. We can't rely on what we've known. We have to look to the future.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. And Mr. Zioli, a minute to rebut.
The Orange Economic Development Director, Anne Marie Slyby, meets with these people regularly, sometimes with me, sometimes without me. Montana Nights was one that held an option to take a lease for over a year, and they stalled through the pandemic until they saw the light at the end of the tunnel, and then completed their lease and came in. We've been trying to get that plaza to consider another grocer or something like that, where AC Moore and I think it was Harmon's both went out there. That would be ideal for a small, kind of the Trader Joe's type of grocer. Plenty of parking, plenty of access, easy access, would be a great location. Amazon even sees some of the writing on the wall. I have a friend with property down in Stratford, and Amazon was supposed to be under contract and sign a contract a week ago for almost $1.1 million per acre, and backed out.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Dean, the next question goes to you first. What are your plans during the next 4 years for encouraging residential and commercial development in Orange?
Well, if I'm lucky enough to have 2 terms as first selectman.
I don't write the questions, just a minute.
Because I made that joke, will you just repeat the question again?
What are your plans for encouraging residential and commercial development in Orange?
Great. So we're building off of that last question. And going back to the plaza that Jim and I were just talking about, I know the company that owns that. I actually have friends who work for that company, Brixmore. That's a big area that I think needs to be developed. I would imagine that Jim probably agrees with me, but something I think that the town of Orange is sorely, sorely lacking is some type of cultural arts hub. We have one of, if not the best, theater department at Amity High School. I'm a proud graduate of that program. And we don't really have anything here in town in Orange. I think it's hugely important, both to the community, but also to our children. You know, I obviously have a background in theater and training kids, and it's important to development of a child to make sure that the arts are involved in their life in some capacity. I would love to see one of these vacant buildings become an arts center. You know, maybe it's a small black box theater, maybe it's a main stage theater, maybe we go out and we bring in a theater company to run it. I think that's a big part of some of the development that can be happening in Orange, because at the high school we value the arts, so I would hope that comes down to the town here. Residential is an interesting thing. I have 30 seconds, but I will say, as somebody who has been looking for the right property in Orange, it's tough. It's tough for young people to come back to Orange and find a suitable place to live. It's also tough for people over the age of 65. I know we have a development happening on Indian River Road, but I do think that's important to the future of Orange and making sure that people can stay here. Thank you.
He thought he shut it off.
2 minutes, Mr. Zero.
Okay, economic development, as I said in the beginning, is one of the most important parts for the first selectman, and you do need to know both directions of that. And I think I'm proof to that with the Hilton Suites that we worked with to bring in. One of the very first things I brought in was United Illuminating when the cinemas decided to close down. The operations center that went along with that. That was a huge one. Then you have the FedEx hub up there where Stu Leonard's owned. You have around the bend from that, you have Aurora Products, which moved to us from Lordship. Stephanie Blackwell wanted bigger space. Right across the street from that, you have the Veteran Affairs Outpatient Services. They searched for 7 years, and I kept leaning on Dick Blumenthal and a couple others who were on that committee, and ultimately they did choose that site in Orange. Next to them is Eastern Tech. They came from 10,000 square feet in Milford to 34,000 square feet in Orange. Across the street, New May Manufacturing, which was Wallach Surgical. They bought that business. They've just put a 40,000 square foot addition on that building and working with them. Everybody panicked, including me, over Sam's and Lowe's going out of business down on the West Haven border. You had two separate private developers who saw the vision there, and they went after Amazon. It keeps it filled and provides jobs for people there. I invite Connor to move Broadway Method Academy to Orange. We'll work, our economic development director will be glad to work with you to find square footage that would be suitable. Years ago, we had a couple people wanted to build a theater down behind High Plains. Richard Knight was one of them, and unfortunately, he passed away way too soon. The other one was a black box theater that was proposed for the back of the building. Oh. Play that damn bell.
Mr. Dean, 1 minute.
Well, funny enough, Jim, I'm actually in the market for about 12,000 square feet, so maybe we can chat after.
I would be glad to.
First off, I do think we need to give credit where credit is due. You didn't solely bring in the UI. That was started under Mitch Goldblatt's administration, and we have to mention that. The other thing is, Stu Leonard's property sat vacant for 14 years. 14 years. So there are things that are happening, but we have to talk about this, I think, coveted property. Here's the other thing. If there's all of this development happening, why are our taxes going up? Because they're continuing to go up. If we have all this commercial development, there should be no reason. I don't use all of my time. I try to be precise.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Zioli, the next question goes to you first. At the 2019 debate, we asked a question related to division in our country. 2 eventful years have passed, and the question is more relevant than ever. What would you do on a grassroots level as the leader of a local community to bring people together?
I think that is one of the worst and most horrific problems we have. And everybody is watching it on the news play out between the left and the right in Washington. I think it's shameful on both sides of the aisle. And quite honestly, in Orange, we are very fortunate that I really think most all of us get along. And that's the way it's supposed to be. Connor and I may poke at each other, but at the end of the day, we still respect each other. Those people down there show you no respect towards each other with their gamesmanship that they're playing, and that filters down all the way to us because there's people in small communities like ours all across this country that think that that's the right way to behave. I think Orange is very fortunate, and we run a lot of events and programs and groups, whether you're at the senior center or the library or the sports programs and all. Orange is a great place for that. They get along, and I think by running more programs and opportunities is what keeps us doing that, and I think that's where we need to keep our focus, is to keep people enjoying each other's company and meeting new people. A lot of we have, I said earlier, 165 homes sold in town through the COVID time. A lot of those people haven't met him. I met two new people, two new families yesterday at our farm came, and it was really kind of fun because neither one of them had any idea who I was, which was great. So I was asking them, why'd you move here? What attracted you? You know, what's going on? I didn't even have to go knock on the door to do it. And they don't know anybody.
Thank you. Mr. Dean, 2 minutes.
I'd like to lead by example. I think that inclusivity starts at the top. And yes, Jim and I do respect each other. And we're obviously fighting for a job right now that we both want because we both care about the town of Orange. That aside, I still respect him. No, I did laugh, but I've also seen Mr. Zioli shout at residents in meetings. And I don't know if that's always called for. We do have to strengthen our community. It's not as strong as it can be. And I've said that I believe in the town of Orange and the people of Orange from day one, and I mean that. We have to do a better job of being inclusive, being kind. You know, it doesn't cost anything to be kind. There was some data that had just come out from our 2020 census. The town of Orange actually has 20% people of color. Look around the room tonight. There's not 20% represented here. And I'm not saying that's any one person's fault. I'm not saying that at all. But I do believe that we can do a better job to be a more inclusive community, a community that is respected all throughout the state and, frankly, our country, because we're good people. I think we just have to do a little bit better of a job opening our arms and bringing people in. And I'm sure that Jim believes that as well. But again, to me, that starts at the top.
Mr. Zioli, 1 minute.
Connor is right. If you badger me enough and poke me enough, I will let you know it. And that night that he witnessed that, he never had known or seen or was aware of the badgering that had been going on for more than a year in that particular area. And when they hear the answers repeatedly, yet don't want to hear the answers, you can get my Irish up a little bit. I'm first one to tell you that. But I think we are a good community, but it's just, how many programs can we run? How many events can we run? How many notices? You know, if you have a new neighbor, bring that neighbor to something. If any of you have a new neighbor tonight that you could have brought here, bring them, because some of them, they just don't. There are some language barriers in some areas, believe it or not, with some of the new people. Great people. But, damn bell.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to exercise some moderator discretion here. We have a question from the audience that's similar to one that the committee put together, but a little more focused. So tackling, and this question is for Mr. Dean, first 2 minutes. Tackling global warming is a major challenge that humanity is facing. We in Orange need to think globally and act locally. As first selectman, what would you do to resolve this, to help this town, reduce this town's carbon footprint?
It's a great question, and I imagine maybe it came from somebody younger in the audience, I would hope, because it seems like the younger generation is very focused on this, which is, I think, an excellent thing. Mitch Goldblatt runs a great recycling committee. I think that's important. We got to keep that up. I think Mitch probably would agree we can expand upon it and do more. Today, actually, I was driving home from a wedding of a family member on the Cape, and unfortunately, I didn't get to doors today, so Jim, we're even for today. But driving home, seeing a variety of different things that other municipalities, states, are using to create renewable energy. We're a town, I've said this, we're a town that loves our land, right, Jim? what can we be doing to perhaps utilize some of our open space to create renewable energy? I think we could do a lot. And in fact, I've already actually been working with Senator Murphy's office on this to figure out how it won't cost you a penny, but how we can get federal funding ushered through from Senator Murphy's office to start creating some of these things. We can look at solar panel fields. We have plenty of fields. And I'll be the first to say, I'm not an expert in climate change. I don't think any of us in this room are. That's okay. Let's bring in the experts. Let's figure out how we can start to address some of these things. But I think turning our back on it is negligent. And I think it's important, I've said before, in terms of being a welcoming community. Let's lead by example. And you know what? We have the land to do it. We've changed the, okay, thank you. I went way over.
The building is not on fire, okay? Mr. Zioli, 2 minutes.
Well, you know, at one point, we did have a committee on this, and there's a man in the room who knows that stuff very well. We did look at solar for the library because it uses an exorbitant amount of electricity every single day when all the heat pumps are on in the library and the lights are on and all over there, to the tune of like $300 a day. But they did a study. They said the roofs weren't the right types of roofs to gather what's required to offset that. We looked at it for possibly thermal for heating the town pool. They told me the solar array that you would need to heat the pool would probably cover most of the field behind the pool. I'm not an engineer. I have to qualify that either the same as Connor. We have to work with the experts. We do have solar on our schools, and it initially turned out to be a disaster, and then the attorney stepped in and kind of straightened out the contracts, and then just a couple months ago, we got a bill for overproduction of electricity, and they were charging us because the solar arrays on the schools produce too much electricity. So there's far more involved that has to be done, but solar arrays are only one possibility. Geothermal is something else. We've switched to a lot of natural gas, which is supposed to be less of a footprint than is fossil fuels. So we've done that. Like at the community center, you can hear those valves just passing gas through over there. But it's supposed to be better than burning oil, is what we've been told. So these are the things we have looked at. And as time evolves, there will be better processes.
Thank you. And Mr. Dean, 1 minute.
Yeah, I'm not totally clear what the plan is. I think that we can't use excuses of contracts to get in the way of climate change. Two totally different things. And when I'm first selectman, I'll make sure that I have a town attorney that comes from a firm that maybe has some specialty in making sure that our climate contracts are up to date and protect the town's interest. It's important. I really think so. You know, I look around the room tonight, and I appreciate everybody being here, but for my generation and my future kids' generation, we're going to have serious, serious problems if we don't start to address it now in big ways. We have to. The globe is changing, and you know, some people like to debate that. I don't really think that's a question of debate. So now it comes to what are we going to do? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Zioli, this question goes to you first. Like much of the state, Orange was heavily affected by Storm Isaias. Is there a role the town should play in somehow enhancing energy security for its residents? Do we know whether the investments in microgrids by Woodbridge and Milford made a difference during the recovery?
First, I have to go back to the last question, just for clarification. And Connor, you won't be happy with me, but it's something you didn't understand. The town attorney had nothing to do with the contracts for the Orange Board of Education's solar panels, and it was the town attorney, Vin Marino, who got them out of the problem. They signed those contracts without them going through the town side of things, which shouldn't have happened, but they did. And it was Vin Marino who got them out of the problem, not into the problem. As far as the flooding and all, and outages, our outages were minimal, fortunately, due to a lot of the tree trimming and all that has been going on in our community. Some people hollered about it, but we get a lot less outages than there. The microgrid in Woodbridge maintains a very small part of Woodbridge. There was a lot of parts of Woodbridge and Bethany that were out with damage due to that. And as you've heard me say at the other debates, flooding, if you hear that we're going to get 3 inches or more of rain, there are some areas in town that were built on that shouldn't have been built on, quite honestly. And 3 inches or more of rain in a short window are going to have flooding. And it does go with the climate change, global warming, I'm sure, because we didn't have these problems back when I was young. 60 years ago, you didn't see these flooding issues like we're seeing now. And so the selectmen have acted to hire some engineering consulting to work on starting to correct some of these issues. But quite honestly, some of them are houses that shouldn't be in areas now.
Mr. Dean, 2 minutes.
I think here in the town of Orange, we have a really unique opportunity in terms of energy, right? We have the UI that's located in Orange. I'd like to bolster up that relationship, and perhaps there's a very strong one. I'm not sure. That's not something that's really public. I will say the state of Connecticut actually held the energy companies to a high standard on this last storm, and I actually think they did a much better job. Most of you know we got out of the woods much quicker than the previous. But I think we need to make sure that that relationship is strong, that we hold them accountable, and that we're working with them to create new ideas for sustainable energy. Let's work with the UI. They'll have the capital. They have the resources. In regards to the flooding, yes, we've now talked about climate change, which I'm glad we have, and that might be part of it. The other part of it, though, is the town's infrastructure, and whether or not the town's infrastructure can handle these 100-year storms that are happening every other year. We have a lot of rain coming this week, apparently. I'm nervous for these people.
Every 6 months.
I'm nervous for these people who some of them almost lost a child in the current in her front yard. I think we have a responsibility from a public safety perspective to make sure we're taking care of the town's infrastructure, which I understand we are on our way to do that, and I'm really glad to hear that. That's not a partisan thing. I'm glad the Board of Selectmen decided to move forward on bringing in an engineer to look at some of the culvert issues here in town, because it's important. This is people's, well-being, and we've got to make sure that we as a town are taking care of our community.
Okay, Mr. Zioli, 1 minute.
I actually met with the new CEO of Avant Grid a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. He was in my office. Really nice guy. And we did talk about, they have a whole new program coming along with other energy sources, because energy is their business and they're looking to make money for their stockholders, let's face it, any way they can. The flooding situation, any of you who have lived here a long time, and I'm going to look at Mitch. Mitch and I both have sat in the same chair. And I don't think either one of us had this many events of flooding as we're seeing now. We had the June 5th flood back in, 82 or something like that. And then there was really very little. boy, we're getting hammered now. And this week here, when I heard, Connor's right, when I heard that we might be getting heavy rain Tuesday, Wednesday again, I'm like, exactly. That's the perfect one. I just shudder at it because I know there's going to be problems that we didn't have.
Thank you. Next question goes to Mr. Dean. First, Orange will be celebrating its bicentennial in 2022 during the next First Selectman's term. If elected, how would you go about commemorating this event?
First thing that I will do as First Selectman is I will appoint my good friend, Mr. James Zioli, to the committee. Come on, folks, it's Sunday night. We got to laugh a little.
Good humor.
God, we can't take ourselves too seriously. I'm looking forward to this event, and I am going to be serving on the committee, which as First Selectman, I'll be really happy to do because I'll have a lot of input. I've often joked my youth, and I'll get more laughs here for a second, but our last celebration, I've got to enjoy watching on YouTube. So I've watched, and this was before I even threw in my name into this race. I've enjoyed watching those clips on OGAT, and I know how special of a celebration that was. My mom and uncles were all present for that. I'm going to bring my background. Let's say this: we're going to have some incredible entertainment to celebrate our town and our town's history. I see a variety of things happening throughout this celebration. Jim and I agree on this. There's likely going to be a parade. We've talked about some type of retelling of our town's history. I think that's important. But I want this to be a celebration where all residents can come and enjoy each other's company. I think what's going to be great about it, as we both know, although we did have Labor Day fireworks, the last year and a half has been really tough for us to gather as a community. And I think that this celebration will be so incredibly special. And I am very excited, although I haven't officially been sworn in yet. I'm very excited to serve on the committee. But I figured I'll wait to get sworn in after November 12th, I think it is, which is inauguration, which I look forward to seeing you all at. Look at
Mr.
that.
Zioli?
He does make me think sometimes. I lived through the first one, and it was a good event. I've actually been digging out some things. Many of you know that I am a collector of all kinds of stuff, and I have quite a few things. I don't know if I have as many as Mitch, but quite a few things. I do have one thing that he wants. It hangs behind my desk on the wall. But it's going to be a big event. We assigned the first, I think there were 20 people, I think the other night is the first round. And Pat O'Sullivan has agreed to be the chair of it. He'll have more time. And he really is looking forward to that. And I tried to pick and choose people. This was the first go-around, and people that have areas of interest, special services, and I did put Connor on it. And I also put another person on it who is very strongly into the entertainment side of things here in town. And I hope they can collaborate and build a committee together for what that section of it will be. But there's more to come because there's going to be a bunch of things. Yeah, there will be a big parade, I'm sure of that. But, the last one, for those of you who were here in town, it went for a week. It will probably be, it's the week of the Town of Orange first town meeting was, I think, June 9th, 1822, I believe. So we're going to try to cover that same week. That's what they did for the sesquicentennial. That's what we will do for the bicentennial. So any of you filling out your calendars, that week where that falls is about where it's going to be. So Pat Romano, no trip that week. Will you please? But so there will be a lot of planning things for that and different events and yep.
Hey, Mr. Dean, anything to add in your minute?
No, I think it's 8:15 on a Sunday night. We agree. We're looking forward to the celebration.
So in that vein, there are two more prepared questions, and one audience question that I will submit, and then we'll go to closing statements. So next to last question here is for Mr. Zeoli first. Would you support a change in how our town elects its officials by limiting the number of consecutive terms someone may hold? What would you suggest that number of terms to be if you're in favor of that?
Term limits. I was asked this question at the critical issues class last week up at the high school. Actually, I have to be there at 8:30 tomorrow morning for the second class. And a girl asked me that question. And I didn't actually come up with a number, but I said, if there was somebody coming along, and we have to do it by party, that was comfortable in doing it and able to fulfill the needs of it, I could step out. I am turned 62 and I got plenty of things that I can find to do with my time. Term limits, I don't know. I think it's more if there's an egregious happening or something to get rid of somebody, but if somebody seems to be doing an okay job or a good job or an excellent job, it's up to the voters every 2 years. If they don't like it, throw them out. If they do like it, keep them in. I think that's part of the voting process. So I'll have to say, as it stands right now, no, I don't support term limits for the first selectman, but trust me, I'm not going to be here till I'm 87. I can guarantee you that.
Mr. Dean?
You talked about passing it off to somebody.
In my party.
I think it's an interesting question. I struggle with this one back and forth. If we're looking at different offices, I think we've probably all shared similar frustrations with Washington. I understand there's a system in Congress of you come in and you got to work your way up to hopefully be a chair of a committee that you hope brings some good to your state. I understand that. It doesn't take away the fact that the everyday American citizen probably gets frustrated with most of their federal delegation. I know I do. In terms of the town of Orange, this is an interesting one, right? Because I'm a 29-year-old challenger to a 16-year incumbent. So the easy way for me to say is, yes, of course I believe in term limits. But I think respectfully, Jim has a point that it is up to the voters. Conversely, I think that it can be up to the voters to change if we want to change our charter, which we have brought revisions to the charter in years past, and it didn't go over well. So I do trust the residents of the town of Orange to make that decision. We make those decisions as a community, and I think that's what's great about democracy. I do think there's something to be said about overstaying a welcome, regardless of what the voters say. And I've made a pledge that I will not be here for 16 years if I'm lucky enough to become your first selectman. Democracy is about an evolution of ideas. Let's pass the ideas off to the next person. Because in 4, 8, 12 terms from now, there's no way I'm going to be bringing fresh perspective like I did when I started. And I think that's important.
Mr. Zeoli, 1 minute to rebut.
The first part of that, I can just think of our last charter revision. We tried to change things. Not one of them, I don't think, passed. Some of them were really good things for the town as far as not having to print an entire ordinance from the charter or something. We had one, Mitch got a grant for $5,000, and the printing was just about $5,000, and it failed. I think that Connor and I agree, and as I said, at least I can only speak to my party. This is the first time finally we have a bunch of younger people coming along in our party to participate in the election process. I can't speak to the Democratic committee, but I can speak to the Republicans, and this is the first time we've had so many new faces, young people wanting to get involved, and that to me is very exciting because that means there's people who will move up through the ranks, and I think participation is great.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dean, high-speed internet access affects the digital divide for students and the competitiveness of the town for professionals. Is the town positioned where it needs to be for internet access? If not, how can it be improved? 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, we've all struggled with slow internet speeds, I'm sure. You know, I don't think I have a perfectly crafted statement on this. I think that technology is always evolving, similar to democracy, I guess. We need to make sure that we are staying on top of the latest and greatest technology within our financial means, right? But I do think in this post-pandemic world, technology and education is going to be something that we're all talking about. The Board of Education did a phenomenal job in this past year in Orange to keep our kids in school. However, at the high school, you know, they tried to make sure that that each one of our students had some type of device to be able to go to school on throughout the pandemic. And I think that it's going to be a continuing conversation. Do I personally think right now we're in crisis mode in terms of high-speed internet? No, but I do think that it will continue to evolve, and we have to stay on top of it and work with providers to make sure that Orange is getting, you know, the latest and greatest of high-speed internet and technology, especially in regards to education.
Mr. Zioli, 2 minutes.
Technology certainly is something that I leave to some experts. We have 3 outstanding tech people working for the town. Currently, we went from 1 to 2 to 3, 2.5 people really, 2 full-time and 1 half-time. And they do a very, very, very good job for us. One of them sitting in the room tonight. And they're outstanding, and I'm glad to have them. When we did finally get, you know, they evolved, and we were able to get fiber into some of our buildings and stuff. That did make a difference, absolutely. Some spots you'll be going around town now, and you'll see them putting these stainless steel looking or aluminum boxes up on top of some of the poles with an antenna sticking up out of them. You're going to start to see some different technology, as I said and Connor said, evolving. Technology is something that's moving so fast that every house will have it available with time. We have some groups, a company that will be installing these on top of the utility poles through neighborhoods and all, which will enhance your service. One of my biggest ones I would love to enhance or find a way around, though, is Cablevision. Their bill keeps going up, and their service goes down, and $200 and some odd a month for mediocre is a challenge, but they kind of have us locked right now. But Frontier and some others are starting to come into the marketplace, and that's an area that really needs help with us, for all of us, young and old. So that's it for me on that.
Mr. Dean, 1 minute.
Jim, I urge you to come into 2021. Join me to Sling TV. It's excellent. Get rid of Cablevision. Come on, folks.
I've heard about it.
No, in all seriousness, I think fiber is something that is going to be looked at everywhere. I've looked at it for my business. Unfortunately, we're not on the line, so we can't get it. So I think that's probably going to be part of negotiations with companies like Verizon in the future with our town hall is, you know, how do we get more lines out to our communities to have this fiber optic internet, because I think it is going to be the way of the future.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So that concludes the prepared questions, but I do have one audience submitted question, and I will not reveal the person's name, but it's from a Peck Place 5th grade student.
Uh-oh.
Doesn't give anything away.
Nothing.
And the question will go to Mr. Zioli first. How should the town of Orange update their website? What would your communication plan to be to keep town residents informed with plans on what is going on in town? 2 minutes.
Okay. Our website is a relatively new one. We had an old crummy one. They instituted a new one. There are, I think, 3 people in town hall who are the access points for updating that website. There is an alert mode on that website that you can sign up for. If you sign up for that alert, you get the special alerts that the average person who doesn't take the time to go on the computer and click on and do it goes. So if you have your phone, the alerts will come to you. You can sign up. I guess the easiest way I'll say right here is contact the First Selectman's office, 203-891-4737, and Mrs. Denny will get you connected as far as the alerts. I think there can be some more improvements. I mean, we've gotten some other buttons on there and things. There's one on there for the election and all, and there was one on there for the pandemic. Dr. Mohammed sometimes would give stuff to update, but it often directed you to the state website for issues regarding the pandemic, the state of Connecticut, so it was a direct link that way. I would like to see more on it, but it requires the departments to cooperate to get the information in. Yesterday they had a trunk or treat event, and it was very lightly attended. We used to do them years ago, and you'd have lines and lines of cars all backed up giving out treats to the children. This one was very lightly, so they didn't do a good job getting the word out, and that was very disappointing to me when I heard it, but I didn't even know they were having it. Nobody even said a word about it soon enough to get that word out. So this is what I'd like to see. We need our departments to understand more involvement with what's going on.
Mr. Dean, 2 minutes.
Funny enough, number 1, communication. I've been talking about this since I began my campaign. I think it's important. I think it's important in 2021, going into 2022, for a municipality to be communicating with its residents. I've said before, Brenda Kupchik, a Republican who I have loads of respect for in Fairfield. She's doing a great job as first selectwoman. Every Friday, the e-blast comes out from her office with all of the updates that are happening in town. I think residents deserve that. And Jim talked about the different departments. I understand. We're talking about a $76 million operating budget, right? This is a big business, the town of Orange. As first selectman, I will make sure that I'm meeting with all of my department heads each week to get a report on what's happening in town. That way, it can go right into my e-blast, and all of you can sign up for that e-blast that will automatically go out on Fridays. We can be using the e-blast. We also can be using Facebook and other social media. I think that's important, especially for our younger generation. That's how they're getting information these days. Let's make sure that they're getting correct information, not misinformation, which we both see a lot of nastiness on Facebook. The town's website, yes, it's been updated. There's a lot to be desired, in my opinion. Somebody who's younger, and my business is mostly on a website. We don't do any transactions in the brick and mortar. We do everything online. So I understand what a robust website needs to be and what information needs to be easily accessible on that site. I think it's important as we head into 2022 for the town of Orange to have the same.
Thank you, Mr. Zioli. 1 minute.
Connor is correct, but age is in his advantage on that particular topic. A lot of our employees are not 29. And sometimes there are some challenges getting them to put up stuff that should be up, some information and data and accessibility. I've tried harping on it with some, and tomorrow morning there's going to be some, well, after I come back from Amity, that are going to hear about this particular topic I already spoke to. Why was it so lightly attended? Why wasn't it handled in a different manner? I don't know if I'd go with Facebook, though, at this point. They seem to be under a lot of fire. So there's questions there as to how they're going to be doing or changing their name or what's going on there. They've been in the news with that a lot. But there are many ways of technology to put information out better.
Thank you. That concludes our question and answer portion of the debate. It's time now for closing statements. And based on the coin flip that happened earlier, Mr. Zioli will give his closing statement first. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, again, I thank all of you for coming out tonight, and those of you at home that might be watching this third and final debate of the 2021 First Selectman's race. I was born in Orange. I was raised in Orange. I have lived my entire life in Orange. I have been a member of the fire department, provided your service there. Member of the fair committee, was co-chairman of that for 8 years. Have provided service through bringing our most valued possession, our children, to school for 25 years. Have served on state boards and commissions. Have sat and worked through the budgetary process with our finance director and team. I think that I have shown and proven the qualifications for this position. We've met with realtors, developers. We have an exciting project coming on Smith Farm Road through Carol Martin, who happens to live right here in town, through Gyroscope Development, for a accessible housing project for people, 40-plus units. You have the project that is coming forward at the Firelight Shopping Center. Appropriate uses in appropriate zones is something that I've been very careful about. I think these will help the town, enhance the town, yet won't overburden the town. I think similar to the very first project I developed when I came in and chased the developer was Fieldstone Village. Was the very first project I chased when I got in office. And finally, to get Mr. Anderson and Mr. Sachs to the table to change their plans from 30 homes on standard lots to 140 living units over there at the corner of Route 34 and Grassy Hill Road has proven to be an outstanding project. It has come with some challenges for the residents of that community to solve, but overall, that is an outstanding project. And I'm very proud to say that I did bring that to Orange, without a doubt. And the one on Smith Farm Road with Carol Martin through Gyroscope also, and the one at Firelight Shopping Center also. We have to look at alternatives to make our town appealing to everybody, the young people, the mature groups, the empty nesters. I think that's important. Keeping control of finances is very important. But just remember, education is 67% of that $76 million number. So the town side is a very small piece. What drives our expenses? Health insurance, energy costs, employee costs are the 3 biggest drivers on the town side of the operation. We all see what our health insurance is doing. We all see where our oil prices are. Oil's up to like $2.80 a gallon. And, oh, I thought he was going to call it. And we know what it costs just to turn the lights on. Never mind gross. Okay.
Thank you. You may applaud if you are so inclined. Mr. Dean, 3 minutes for your closing statement.
I too would like to thank the Orshulom Men's Club for hosting this debate, and to Roger for moderating. You did a great job. And of course to all of you both here and at home. Before I go on with my prepared remarks, it really has been an honor and a privilege. We've debated ideas of how we can move the town of Orange forward, but at least we had a few laughs here on a Sunday night, so I appreciate that. You've now heard the First Selectman and I debate many different topics over the last 3 debates. You've witnessed months of campaigning, whether at your front steps or at an event. You've driven around our small town and seen names on signs, hopefully reminding you that in just a short time, your role as an American citizen and a resident of this town will be center stage. My friends, in just over a week, the First Selectman and I will have our ultimate test. We pass the power to you, the voters, the residents of the great town of Orange. Over the past 5 months, I've worked tirelessly to introduce myself to residents, My team and I have brainstormed ideas on how to improve the quality of life to our community. We've spent hours upon hours in budgets, calculating ways to save money for you, the voter. I've had the opportunity to speak with residents, some of whom felt comfortable enough to open up and share their stories, at times begging for help. In some cases, I've spent far too much time at their door, simply because the conversation was genuine and honest, and most likely because of the shared belief that Orange can do better. This experience has been challenging, exhilarating, and rewarding. I am and will forever be grateful that our message has resonated with the people of Orange. Despite the fact that my opponent believes I'm unqualified to do the job, I know that my business experience, my determination, and my ability to collaborate will make me an excellent first selectman of the town of Orange. In fact, right now, more than ever before, our town needs fresh perspective and the antithesis of a career politician who has stagnated growth. On Tuesday, November 2nd, next week, we can together exceed expectations and move Orange forward. I ask for your vote as you head to the polls on Election Day, and I thank you sincerely for your support.
Thank you very much to both candidates for sharing your perspectives and your plans for the town of Orange. We're grateful that you took the time out tonight to come and share your views with us. I'd also like to thank the Orshaloom Men's Club, who did such a great job of organizing this, and of course, Orange Government Access TV for recording and for streaming it out to the people out in their homes. That concludes the evening's debate. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you on November 2nd at the polls.